People always ask me, Jamie, what's the secret? How do you run the biggest bank in America? How do you survive crisis after crisis? And I tell them the same thing every time. There is no secret. There's no magic formula. There's no Wall Street trick that makes you invincible. What separates the survivors from the casualties are habits. 5 fundamental habits that I've built over 40 years in this business. Habits that got me through the 2008 financial crisis when banks were dropping like flies. Habits that kept JP Morgan standing when Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns, and Merrill Lynch all went down in flames. These aren't the habits they teach you at Harvard Business School. These aren't the polished, sanitized lessons you read in leadership books. These are the brutal, battle-tested habits that keep you alive when the markets are bleeding, when your phone is ringing off the hook at 3 a.m., when the President of the United States is calling you asking if the entire financial system is about to collapse. I'm Jamie Dimon. I've been CEO of JP Morgan Chase for nearly 2 decades. We manage over $3 trillion in assets. We employ over 250,000 people. And every single day, I'm responsible for decisions that can move markets, that can affect millions of people's lives, that can determine whether the economy thrives or crashes. That responsibility, it's crushing, it's terrifying, and it never, ever stops. But you know what? I love it. I wake up every morning at 5 a.m., and I can't wait to get to work. Not because I'm some workaholic who doesn't have a life, but because I've built habits that make me effective, that make me resilient, that allow me to operate at the highest level even when the pressure would break most people. So let me tell you about these 5 habits. And I'm warning you right now, they're not easy. They're not comfortable. They're not the kind of self-help nonsense you see on social media. These are hard, demanding, relentless habits that require discipline most people don't have. But if you can build them, if you can commit to them, they will transform your life. They will make you unstoppable. Habit 1, start your day before the market opens. Let me tell you about September 15th, 2008, the day Lehman Brothers died. I got the call at 4:47 a.m. I remember the exact time because I was already awake, already in my home office, already reading the overnight reports from Asia and Europe. The voice on the other end was panicked. Jamie, Lehman's filing for bankruptcy. It's happening right now. While most of Wall Street was still sleeping, while CEOs were comfortable in their beds, dreaming about their next vacation, I had already been working for 2 hours. I had already read 3 newspapers. I had already reviewed JP Morgan's exposure to Lehman. I had already gamed out 3 different scenarios for how the day would unfold. That's the first habit. You start your day before everyone else, before the market opens, before the chaos begins, before the world makes demands on your time and attention. I wake up at 5 a.m. every single day, weekends included. And the first thing I do, the very first thing, is not check my email. It's not scroll through Twitter. It's not look at my phone. The first thing I do is claim my morning. I claim the time for myself, for my preparation, for getting my mind right before the battles begin. I make coffee, strong, black, no sugar. And then I sit down with the Wall Street Journal, the Financial Times, and the New York Times. Physical newspapers, not digital, not on a screen. Real paper that I can hold, that I can mark up, that forces me to slow down and actually think about what I'm reading. By 6 a.m., I'm on the phone with our global team. Tokyo has been open for hours. London is in full swing. I'm getting real-time intelligence about what's moving markets, what's concerning our clients, what risks are emerging. And by the time I get to the office at 7 a.m., I'm not reacting. I'm not scrambling. I'm ahead of the curve. Here's what most people don't understand about leadership at this level. If you're reacting to events, you've already lost. If you're finding out about problems at the same time everyone else is, you're not leading, you're following, and followers don't survive on Wall Street. Starting your day early isn't about putting in more hours. It's about controlling your time. It's about creating space to think, to plan, to prepare. It's about being proactive instead of reactive. During the 2008 crisis, I was having breakfast meetings at 6:30 a.m. with Treasury Secretary Hank Paulson. While other CEOs were still waking up, we were already making decisions that would determine whether the American financial system survived or collapsed. That's not bragging. That's just reality. The early bird doesn't just get the worm. The early bird survives. Now, I know what you're thinking, Jamie, I'm not a morning person. I do my best work at night. Well, let me tell you something. The market doesn't care about your preferences. Wall Street doesn't care if you're a morning person or a night owl. The crisis doesn't wait until you've had your second cup of coffee and feel ready. You train yourself. You build the discipline, you go to bed earlier so you can wake up earlier, you sacrifice the late night TV, the scrolling on your phone, the comfort of sleeping in. Because if you want to compete at the highest level, if you want to lead in the most competitive environment in the world, you don't get to indulge your preferences. You do what works. And starting your day before everyone else that works, it's worked for me for 40 years and it'll work for you too. Habit hash 2, know your numbers cold. Let me take you back to a moment that almost destroyed my career. It was 2012. We had just discovered a massive trading loss in our London office, what became known as the London whale scandal. Billions of dollars gone, and I had to go in front of Congress and explain how it happened. I sat in that hearing room with cameras everywhere, with senators who wanted my head on a platter, with the entire financial world watching to see if JP Morgan's CEO could survive this crisis. And they grilled me for hours about trades, about risk models, about positions and obscure derivatives that most people had never even heard of. And you know what? I knew every single number. I knew the positions. I knew the risk exposure. I knew the trading strategies. I knew which trader made which decision and why. I didn't have to look at notes. I didn't have to ask my staff for help. I knew it cold. That's the second habit. Know your numbers, not just the big picture, not just a summary. Every single number that matters to your business, you need to know it intimately. At JP Morgan, I review hundreds of reports every week. Risk reports, trading reports, loan portfolios, capital ratios, liquidity positions, regulatory compliance. I'm not just glancing at them, I'm studying them, I'm questioning them, I'm challenging my team when something doesn't make sense. People think that when you get to my level, you can just delegate all the details to other people. You can just focus on the big picture and let your team handle the numbers. That's garbage. That's how you end up blindsided. That's how you end up like the CEOs of Lehman or Bear Stearns, who woke up one morning and discovered their bank was insolvent because they didn't understand what was happening beneath the surface. I'll give you an example. During the 2008 crisis, I knew JP Morgan's exposure to mortgage-backed securities down to the dollar. I knew which bonds we owned, what they were worth, how much we could lose in a worst-case scenario. And when Treasury Secretary Paulson called me and asked if we could acquire Bear Stearns over a weekend, literally 48 hours, to make the biggest decision in our bank's history, I didn't need a week to run the numbers. I already knew them. We closed the Bear Stearns deal for $10 a share. $10. A bank that had been worth $170 a share just 2 days earlier. And we survived because I knew our numbers, I knew their numbers, and I knew we could absorb the risk. This habit, it's exhausting. It's tedious. There are nights when I'd rather be home with my family than sitting in my office reviewing another 200-page risk report. But you know what's more exhausting? Getting blindsided, discovering a problem too late to fix it, standing in front of shareholders and admitting you didn't know what was happening in your own company. So I stay on top of it every day, every week, every quarter. I review the numbers. I challenge them. I make sure I understand not just what they say, but what they mean, what they're hiding, what risks they're not capturing. And here's the thing that separates great leaders from average ones. Average leaders know the numbers. Great leaders know which numbers matter. They know which metrics are real indicators of health or danger and which are just noise. At JP Morgan, I don't care about vanity metrics. I don't care about revenue growth if it's coming from taking stupid risks. I care about return on equity. I care about capital ratios. I care about the quality of our loan portfolio, not just the size. I care about whether we're building long-term value or just chasing short-term profits. And when the numbers tell me something's wrong, I act immediately. I don't wait. I don't hope it'll get better. I don't let problems fester because small problems become big problems and big problems become catastrophes. The London whale should have been caught earlier. That's on me. But when we finally discovered it, we moved fast. We shut down the positions. We replaced the management. We changed our risk systems. We didn't hide it. We didn't minimize it. We dealt with it. That's what knowing your numbers lets you do. It lets you act with confidence and speed when things go wrong because you're not guessing. You're not hoping. Habit hash 3, prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. March 16, 2008, a Sunday, I was supposed to be at my daughter's basketball game. Instead, I was in a conference room at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York with Tim Geithner, the Treasury Secretary, and a dozen other CEOs. Bear Stearns was hours away from collapse, and we had to figure out if JP Morgan would step in and buy them. The atmosphere in that room was apocalyptic. People were terrified. The 5th largest investment bank in America was about to fail, and everyone knew that if Bear Stearns went down, the dominoes would start falling. Who's next? Lehman, Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley? Would the entire system collapse? But while everyone else was panicking, while other CEOs were arguing about whether we should even try to save Bear Stearns, I was calm, not because I wasn't scared, I was terrified, but because we had already prepared for this exact scenario. 3 months earlier, in December 2007, I had gathered my senior leadership team and told them something they didn't want to hear. The mortgage market is going to blow up, housing prices are going to crash, and when they do, banks are going to fail. We need to prepare for a crisis worse than anything we've seen in our careers. We ran stress tests, worst case scenarios. What if housing prices fell 20%? What if unemployment hit 10%? What if the credit markets froze? We didn't just ask these questions, we built plans to survive them. We raised capital, we cut exposure to risky assets, we built liquidity reserves, we prepared. That's the third habit. Always prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. Most people do the opposite. They hope for the best and ignore the worst. They tell themselves, it won't be that bad, things will work out, we'll be fine. And then when the crisis hits, they're completely unprepared. They panic, they make terrible decisions. They go under. I've lived through multiple crises in my career. The 1987 stock market crash, the 1998 Russian debt crisis, the dot-com bubble, 9/11 events, the 2008 financial crisis, the European debt crisis, the pandemic. And you know what? We survived every single one, not because we were lucky, because we were prepared. At JP Morgan, we run something called the Fortress Balance Sheet strategy. It means we always maintain more capital, more liquidity, more reserves than regulators require, way more. And when times are good, when the market's booming, people criticize us for it. They say, Jamie, you're too conservative, you're leaving money on the table, you should be taking more risk, making higher returns. And I tell them the same thing every time. I don't care about maximizing returns in good times. I care about surviving the bad times. Because if you don't survive the crisis, you don't get to enjoy the recovery. In 2007, while other banks were gorging themselves on subprime mortgages, while they were leveraging up 40-1, while they were chasing every last basis point of yield, we were pulling back. We were reducing risk. We were building our fortress. And when 2008 hit, when Lehman failed and the entire system froze, we had $100 billion in cash. $100 billion. While other banks were begging for government bailouts, while they were on the verge of collapse, we had the resources to not just survive, but to acquire assets at fire sale prices. We bought Bear Stearns. We bought Washington Mutual. We came out of the crisis stronger than we went in, not because we were smarter than everyone else, but because we prepared when everyone else was getting greedy. This habit applies to everything. Your personal finances, your career, your business. Whatever you're doing, you need to be asking yourself, what's the worst that could happen? And if it does happen, will I survive? Don't just plan for the scenario where everything goes right. Plan for the scenario where everything goes wrong. Build reserves, create buffers, have backup plans. And then when the crisis hits, and it will hit, I promise you, you'll be ready. People call me paranoid. They say I'm too cautious, too worried about risks that might never materialize. And maybe they're right. Maybe I am paranoid. But you know what? Paranoid people survive. Optimists end up at Lehman Brothers. Habit hash 4, communicate with radical transparency. So let me tell you about one of the hardest calls I've ever made. May 10th, 2012. We had just discovered the London whale losses were bigger than we thought. Much bigger. We were going to have to announce a $2 billion trading loss. $2 billion. Gone. I could have hidden it. I could have tried to bury it in the quarterly report, minimize it, spin it as not that bad. A lot of CEOs would have done exactly that, but I didn't. I picked up the phone and called the Wall Street Journal, and I told them everything, every ugly detail. We made a terrible mistake. We were sloppy. We were stupid, and we're going to fix it. That's the fourth habit. Communicate with radical transparency, especially when things go wrong. Here's what most leaders get wrong about communication. They think their job is to make everything sound good, to spin bad news, to protect the stock price, to maintain confidence. And sure, all of that matters, but you know what matters more? Trust. If people don't trust you, if they think you're hiding things, if they suspect you're not telling them the full truth, you're finished. In a crisis, trust is everything. It's the only thing that keeps stakeholders from panicking, from running for the exits, from assuming the worst. And you can't build trust through happy talk. You build trust by telling the truth, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. During the financial crisis, I was on the phone with regulators, with clients, with investors, with employees multiple times every day, and I didn't sugarcoat anything. I told them exactly what we knew, what we didn't know, and what we were doing about it. When things were bad, I said they were bad. When we made mistakes, I admitted them. And you know what happened? People trusted us. Clients didn't flee. Investors stuck with us. Employees stayed loyal because they knew that if Jamie Dimon said something, it was real. It wasn't spin. It wasn't BS. It was the truth. I'll give you another example. In 2013, we agreed to pay $13 billion in fines to the government for our role in the mortgage crisis. $13 billion, the largest settlement in history. And I had to stand up in front of our shareholders and explain why we were paying it. I didn't make excuses. I didn't blame previous management. I didn't try to minimize what we'd done. I said, we made mistakes. We sold mortgage products we shouldn't have sold, and we're paying the price for it. This is the cost of cleaning up the past so we can move forward. People respected that. They didn't like it. Nobody likes paying $13 billion in fines, but they respected that I was being straight with them. This habit is hard because it requires vulnerability. It requires you to admit when you're wrong, when you don't have all the answers, when you're scared. And nobody wants to look weak, especially in a business like banking, where projecting confidence and strength is everything. But here's the paradox. Admitting weakness makes you stronger. Admitting mistakes builds trust, and trust is the foundation of everything. I've seen leaders destroy their companies by trying to hide problems, by sugarcoating bad news, by telling people what they want to hear instead of what they need to hear. And every single time it backfires, the truth eventually comes out. And when it does, the trust is gone forever. So I choose radical transparency. I choose uncomfortable honesty over comfortable lies, and it's worked for 40 years. Habit hash 5, never stop learning, never stop fighting. I'm 67 years old. I've been in banking for over 4 decades. I've run JP Morgan Chase for 18 years. I've been through every crisis, every cycle, every market condition you can imagine. And you know what I did this morning? I spent 2 hours reading research reports about artificial intelligence, about crypto, about climate risk, about technologies and trends that could reshape banking in the next decade. Because at 67, I'm still a student. I'm still learning. And the day I stop learning is the day I need to retire. That's the 5th and final habit. Never stop learning, never stop fighting, never get comfortable. The moment you think you figured it all out, the moment you think you know everything, you're done. The world changes too fast. Technology evolves too quickly. Competitors emerge from nowhere. And if you're not constantly learning, constantly adapting, constantly fighting to stay ahead, you'll get left behind. I've watched so many brilliant people in this business get complacent. They achieved success, they got comfortable, and then they stopped pushing. They stopped questioning their assumptions. They stopped challenging themselves. And slowly, imperceptibly, they became irrelevant. That's not going to happen to me. Not while I'm still breathing. At JP Morgan, we have a culture of constant improvement. Every quarter, we ask ourselves, what can we do better? What are we missing? What are competitors doing that we're not? Where are we vulnerable? And we're brutally honest in those conversations. I tell my team all the time, I don't want yes men. I don't want people who agree with everything I say. I want people who will challenge me, who will tell me when I'm wrong, who will bring me ideas I haven't thought of. Because here's the reality. I don't have all the answers. Nobody does. The world is too complex, too unpredictable. The best you can do is surround yourself with smart people, listen to different perspectives, keep learning, and make the best decisions you can with the information you have. And when you make a mistake, because you will make mistakes, you learn from it. You adapt, you get better. The London whale was a mistake, a big, expensive, embarrassing mistake, but we learned from it. We overhauled our risk management systems. We changed our culture around trading. We came out of it stronger. That's what learning looks like. It's not comfortable. It's not easy, but it's essential. The other part of this habit is the fighting. Never stop fighting. This business, banking, Wall Street, finance, it's a war every single day. You're fighting for market share. You're fighting against competitors. You're fighting against regulators who want to constrain you. You're fighting against market conditions that want to destroy you. And you can't take a day off. You can't coast. You can't relax. Because the moment you do, someone else is going to pass you. Some competitor is going to take your clients. Some crisis is going to catch you unprepared. I've been accused of being too aggressive, too combative, and maybe that's true. But you know what? JP Morgan Chase is the most valuable bank in the world. We have the strongest balance sheet. We survived every crisis. We didn't survive by being passive. We survived by fighting. When the government wanted to impose regulations that would cripple our business, I fought them. When competitors tried to poach our clients, I fought back. When markets crashed and everyone was panicking, I fought to keep us strong. That's what leaders do. They fight, not for their own ego, not for their own benefit, but for their people, for their shareholders, for their clients. I'm 67 years old, and I've got more fire in me today than I did at 40 because I love this business. I love the challenge. I love the competition. I love building something great, and I'm not stopping, not till they carry me out. So there you have it. 5 habits that have defined my career, 5 habits that got me through the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression, 5 habits that made JP Morgan Chase the strongest bank in the world. Start your day before the market opens. Know your numbers cold. Prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. Communicate with radical transparency. And never stop learning. Never stop fighting. These aren't easy habits. They require discipline. They require sacrifice. They require you to be uncomfortable, to push yourself, to demand more from yourself than most people are willing to give. But if you build them, if you commit to them, they will transform your life. They will make you stronger, more resilient, more successful than you ever imagined. I'm not special. I'm not smarter than you. I just built better habits, and you can too. Now get to work.